We'll get started right away, and I want to start by introducing Amar and Rachel. So, Amar Harrag, is it?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Please forgive me for mispronouncing if I did. He is a USD alum and a serial San Diego entrepreneur who won't tell us how many companies he's currently involved with, but a lot. He builds brands, restaurants, and businesses that have an impact, most of them in the California-Baja California region. Rachel Christensen is a member of our team. She's the Assistant Director of Programs at the Brink Small Business Development Center at University of San Diego. Formerly, she and her colleagues grew USD's Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge to the worldwide student social venture pitch experience that it is today. Both Amar and Rachel serve on a social enterprise board in Baja California, Mexico, and connect, coach, and support impact-minded businesses and social entrepreneurs in San Diego and Tijuana daily. So it's a pleasure to have them share with us today on thinking about business and social venture and shared values. So with that being said, Rachel, go right ahead. And by the way, just one thing, feel free to join us on video. Feel free to ask questions on chat. I'll be watching that and interrupting them if needed. And also feel free to come off mute and speak up. So go ahead, let's get started. Thanks.
Cool. Well, delighted to have you here. And like I said, Juliet is kind of taking on the reins and Sylvia joining us later on some of the social innovation stuff at USD. We're hoping today will be kind of a session that's helpful to you in a very practical sense. Amar and I were chatting about this last week, that people come to sort of social impact business from different ways. I'll just sort of disclose that I came to this space being really interested in community development. International economic development was my sort of what I studied in undergrad, and thought business and corporations were bad for most of my life. And then have found every job since then. I found myself in business and really came to this space, and I don't think business is bad now, by the way. I've had a mindset shift, but really came to this space because how much you can scale, sort of scale your impact if you use business tools and a business mindset. And Misty Rusk, who just joined, who's the director of the Brink, I will paraphrase something that she always says about business changing the world, because if you have something that the world really needs and you can get it to market, you can get it all over the world. So it's really sort of one of our motivating factors at the Brink too. So today we'll feature there's like a spectrum of social impact business and social venture and social innovation. We'll go through a couple terms quickly, but there's from sort of nonprofits where social enterprise were sort of born in terms of the US history, groups like, Goodwill or the YMCA. And so how can we sustain our operations as a nonprofit? And then all the way to, sort of profit first, but let's think about shareholder capitalism instead of only stakeholder capitalism, and how can we have an impact? And so people come to it from different angles, and I think you'll find Amar's story quite interesting too. But wanted to share that context. And before we get to the first slide, let's see, I don't know, maybe I can do it even, but Chris, would you help me with the poll if you're able? If not, I will try to do it here. Oh, I can do it. I guess I can serve myself. Is everybody able to see this poll? We'd be curious about, quickly how you identify, and then what you're most curious about, and then we'll kind of tailor some of what we talk about in our short time together based on that, and then I'll flash the results so that you can kind of get a sense of who's on the call. I know we did a few introductions before. I'll give it a few more seconds. Oops.
We're about halfway there, Rachel.
Yep. Flash it up in a second.
Please, there we go. Almost all of you.
Thanks for obliging early in the morning, or not late, mid-morning for a poll. All right, I'll give it just another minute, and then let's see. We can share results. So it looks like people can probably share results, but looks like we're a little bit more leaning towards kind of impact community leader on this space, but quite a few identifying as business owners, social entrepreneurs. And then looks like Amar will focus a little bit more on impact measurement and storytelling, which is good because you're pretty good at those things. Kind of the PR guru, if you ask me, on the call with us today. So that helps us kind of know where we want to focus today. So I'll just share, oops, how about we don't go all through all my slides. this is actually Amar. I stole this from a 7x7 talk that I highly recommend you watch about kind of a new paradigm for business that he did as an alum for the School of Business. Was it 2 years ago, Amar, or last year? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 years ago, actually.
So if you want more about Amar's story, I'd highly recommend that. And then I just threw up there some identities I have in terms of a connector. I'm a very, very, very small business owner, as Misty knows. I officiate weddings. I have a wedding service business, and identify also as a teacher around the Sustainable Development Goals and a fronteriza in the San Diego Tijuana border region. I put here on the bottom a couple things I've done around SDG number 4 around quality education, including the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge, and then with a group called Edify, worked with edupreneurs in about 8 countries in West Africa and Latin America and East Africa. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And then Amar, I don't know if you want to share anything. I just put a more recent project, Tohono, but anything in terms of the social impact business or how you're using your businesses, if you want to give us a little introduction before we get into some of the themes today.
Yeah, actually, that talk at USD was very impactful for me as well, because we very rarely put ourselves in a position where we have to define what we stand for and what our goals are. And the format of that talk is 7 minutes. So you have 7 minutes to not only tell your story, clarify, or have a clear message to give the world, but also trying to kind of come from a place where you can inspire others. And in that process, it really helps you kind of like streamline all your ideas, your thoughts, and all of that. I feel like the TED Talk, where it's like 20 minutes, you have a long time to build the story and things like that. So that talk really helped me kind of put a clear stand on what I'm about and what I want and to do. And I look at it as it's almost like something that now, because I've put it out there, that I have to keep doing, and I kind of cannot go back, once you started on this path. And so really opportunity to do that. And then, I heard you say about the business, your challenge with businesses earlier. And I just wanted to add one thing to that is, to me, it's not so much that, it's not so much a choice. I think we don't have a choice. I think the only way the world can get into a better place is if businesses become more impactful. I think that there's just no way to change the paradigm of capitalism and kind of like how society is structured, and we'll never be able to go back and reset economies and so forth. So in looking further, to me, the only way we can actually have a true change and impact is to take what's out there and turn it into something positive. And so that's where, for me, social enterprise and kind of business model where the impact is at the center of the business model is the only way it makes sense to look at developing, the economy and starting a business from now on. So that's really what I would like to kind of continue to showcase through my example.
So we won't spend too much time on the case for impact, because I think probably people are here, if you will, the already converted, or the people that probably are here today. So I just threw up a couple terms there, like some of the whys, community, certainly financial reasons to pursue impact too. We know how consumer trends are changing and how brands really make an impact in the financial sense now is through social impact, or at least community awareness. Power of story. I mean, the social in the sense of like, even not even social change, just social, like community orientation is what people resonate with. Consumer trends, and then personal story. Amar and I just gave you like a highlight of our own personal story. I already said you should watch Amar's 7x7. If you care to watch my TEDx, you can. I don't know if I tell you should, but you can, where we talk a little bit about our why and how we got into social entrepreneurship. So would love to go from there. I won't go into too many terms because these are all things we probably know, but there's different terms that get used in different ways: social impact or community or environmental impact, being a more general term for some kind of positive shift or change. Social enterprise or business or venture, generally meaning that there's money being made, whereas social innovation could be something, a sort of orientation or an effort that doesn't have to necessarily mean that profit is a primary goal. shared value, meaning a mindset for businesses where there's not just value for those that have invested in the company or founded the company, but for the wider neighborhood or community. And then stakeholder capitalism, this idea that's shareholder capitalism versus stakeholder capitalism. These newer concepts around who are really the stakeholders, and does that include community? So this was like way too fun today for me to just like throw up a couple logos here. So you'll see like, this is Amar's with a couple friends, group Tohono, and then we've got groups like Workshop for Warriors and Kitchens for Good. These are all groups either in San Diego or Tijuana or a little bit further, and it's another area in Baja California. Some of them were launched by the Global Social Innovation Challenge, like Nature Unplugged here at USD. Others hosted at San Diego State, like the Wesley Residence Home. Some of them located in neighborhoods like City Heights, like the Dojo Cafe. Some working in Tijuana, like Create Purpose and One Digital World. Some of them clients at the Brink, many of them on the call. So these are just groups that either identify or don't as a social business, but I would define that they are a social business and that they are both making money by selling something, a service or a product. And there's some sort of movement behind it in terms of social change or social good. So Amar, I don't know if there's any that I missed here that I should definitely mention. Art Produce, I know that they're on the call today too, but there's many more in San Diego, Tijuana. I don't know, did I miss anybody really big, Amar?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, you and I have a similar circle, and I think a lot of the people that that you put on here are the first people that will come to mind in San Diego for sure.
It is kind of a community, but like, you know, all across Africa, for example, that was sort of one of the initial models of selling crafts from different artisans in Africa. But she's been featured on, she's a local San Diegan and featured on Forbes and sells in places like, I'm trying to remember, Pier 1 or something like that. So, you know, quite successful social entrepreneur in San Diego. And again, some really cool stuff around work with veterans and work with refugees and immigrants. And orphans, and VISE, for example, is a group mostly based in Tijuana, but they started their model in China. They're trying to help factory workers be able to report abuses in their workplace on a social media. And now they're working in different parts of Tijuana. So another kind of local example that's pretty interesting of something that started somewhere else and came to Tijuana. So I just put regional smiles and stories. I won't go into all of these, but some fun stuff, you know, mission-driven finance, a group that finances social impact businesses and nonprofits. I threw up a couple of their borrow profiles. This is a fun recent story of a West African fashion designer in City Heights who has worked with businesses to help people be safe in style with her West African print masks. This is Suja Juice, a USD affiliated company alum, you know, bringing Suja Juice to workers in hospitals during the beginning of the pandemic. And then these are a couple business ventures launched by the International Rescue Committee. Project CHOP pop up on 30th, for example, where they're using business tactics as a nonprofit to generate awareness and profit, as well as workforce training. So some really fun things. And then there's a PPE exchange that uses blockchain technology to verify PPE that was launched by a USD alum. So some really fun sort of timely examples of business doing good in San Diego and certainly making USD proud. So I don't know, Amar, there's a couple things here. I was gonna throw it over to you in terms of maybe some questions people might have. We can even take some in the chat. I'll share it just because we've got limited time, but I thought if we could entertain a couple quesher around the bottom line. I solicited a couple questions before the call, and yeah, go ahead.
To kind of just do a high-level summary of what I'm doing, so that way people have a perspective.
I think so. And then I think if you can weave in, and then as you do some overview, maybe people can ask questions, especially around the financial part, the measurement and story part. So those kind of two areas I think is where we want to dig in. So please share a little bit, and then people will probably want to ask some questions about how you're doing it. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Yeah, I have obviously in the last few years developed a few brands, like you mentioned. The one I think that has maybe the most popular in San Diego has been the Tohono brand, that is a Mezcal tasting room, Mezcal experience, where it's an actual restaurant bar tasting room that is there to promote the dish of Mezcal producers. The adjacent agaves and how the whole mezcal industry is growing up.
Just a quick interruption. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing Amar? It's just a little garbled on your microphone. I don't know if maybe if I give you a minute or 30 seconds to see if you can figure out. Yeah, I think you're frozen now too. So maybe I'll give you just a few seconds to figure out if it's an internet or a microphone issue. And I'll just share quickly on, I'll jump ahead a little bit as Amar comes back with us around a couple things around his brand. Certainly would encourage you to follow Tohono on Instagram, but these are some things, I don't want to steal his thunder, but some of the things they've done during the pandemic, which has been pretty interesting. So it's located in Old Town. They're very connected with the Old Town business community, and are now doing, now that open air dining is more of a thing, doing some really interesting things to kind of both activate the space with placemaking techniques to get people to come and enjoy Old Town, but also doing a lot of things online, certainly with online delivery and then online tasting. So this is they're all mezcal lovers and really connected to both the artisans and the makers of mezcal in places like Oaxaca, Mexico, and all of the impact in terms of some of the profits are reinvested primarily in orphanages in Baja California, but some other artistic endeavors as well. And so some online tastings that they did. And then certainly some of the work that they're doing with other businesses in the restaurant and hospitality space in Old Town to really kind of continue to help each other out and do things together where they're sort of helping, the brands are helping each other out. So one thing I'll one piece of wisdom that Amar was going to share with you while we're waiting for him to come back. But one piece is that if you, during a pandemic, connect with your community online in ways that are meaningful to them. This is true anytime, and Lauren would probably, I imagine, nod her head fiercely to this, but particularly, Amar, I'd love for you to say it. I was starting to steal a little bit of your thunder right here about the tastings, but would love to hear it in your own words in terms of connecting with community during the pandemic and that kind of thing, as you'd like to share.
Yeah, sorry about that. My when I started talking, my computer decided to freeze. So I'm on my phone now, but I will link on the computer.
Sure.
Is the sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, I guess what I was sharing is the fact that in a couple of years of owning Tohono and opening Tohono, we really garnered a really amazing community of mezcal lovers, and a lot of people that didn't know they were mezcal lovers. They got educated, through a lot of the events that we do, etc. And now we're very engaged, and including people that now have started their own semi-mezcal business. So it's been really interesting to see that and see the connection with the brands down in Mexico, the people in Oaxaca that are, obviously this is their life. It's not just a small project for them. It's what they do day in, day out, and etc. So when the pandemic hit, we knew that they were going to be the most impacted. And so, we made sure that we've continued our efforts and kind of moved towards more of a virtual kind of setup that can be something that can reach even a bigger audience demographic. So we've started launching these virtual mezcal tastings on Thursdays, where people basically receive a box of mezcal at home with 3 different mezcals that are numbered 1, 2, 3, and then they join the tasting, and there they get to learn about each one of the mezcal that they're trying. Again, that's an opportunity to tell the story about each of the brands, the people behind the mezcal, etc. And then we also opened a speakeasy in the back of that restaurant. And so the speakeasy, we felt it was an opportunity to continue our goal of educating people about the history of alcohol. So we started this YouTube channel where each week we have a mezcal kit that a cocktail kit that you can order, but also like a clear explanation about, the type of drink that is, the history behind that cocktail and the ingredients. So we're really trying to morph the virtual with the physical, in the goal of just keep the emotion and the excitement going, because we all know this is temporary and things will go back to normal, and we want to still be there, and we want to continue to support in every way we can. So that's one of the projects. The other project has been that I have been working on building a retreat center down in Baja California. So that's been in the works for a couple of years. And that involved a lot of bringing an amazing team together, kind of creating the whole business model, etc. And that would be a place that would basically generate profit. You know, we want to rent the space to other communities. But with that profit, we will have a side of giving back and connect with other nonprofits that are doing the work on the ground, like Create Purpose and so forth, but also have our own initiatives within our, like near our community. So we're not there to just build a beautiful space that will bring in a lot of people from all over the world, but we're also there to impact everybody in that local community. So as we grow, that community improves as well. So we're doing things as much as, you know, growing our own food I mean, our goal is to have a biodynamic farm in an orphanage that has a farm that is not producing right now. We want to have a horse rescue center. We want to have, I mean, we have a lot of social impact initiatives. So that's my evergreen project. And then, you know, as things have developed on the Mezcal side, we've also started another restaurant here in San Diego that's focused on educating people about the local beer industry. And so giving a space for local beer brands. That's called Hidden Craft. And we just opened recently, which is a bit crazy during the pandemic, but you know, we had done this for a while. So we, has been an ongoing process. So I also have my real estate company that I've been trying to really rebrand and relaunch. That has been focused on, you know, we build and develop properties that are mostly on affordable housing. You know, we want to offer an opportunity to families that are not able to find, you know, like we found that there was a niche for families of, you know, the over 3 children that it gets really challenging in San Diego, and there's a housing crisis that's looming really. And so with a couple of partners, we came up with a business model where we're building infill projects that will allow for rentals, you know, long-term rentals for those families. And so the long-term goal of that is to have an urban garden with each one of the projects that will basically be a space for the families to learn about farming and gardening. And so in every aspect, those are all business models that are there to, you know, be sustainable, that have, you know, business partners, that have investors involved, and that are based on a business model that makes sense financially. However, the mission behind each one of those projects is to have an impact on the community at large, on the local community, but also, you know, in the life of the employees, the partners, and everybody involved. So Tohono is a perfect example, and, you know, we're expanding. We're opening in Baja California this summer as well, with the same intention, which is to recruit people that are passionate, that care about the mission, and that want to grow and learn with the project. So those are the key elements that I think every company can have. And so by me being involved with all those different industries, from restaurants, hospitality, real estate, there's a World Equals company, and so forth. My intention is to showcase that you can do it in any industry. You can literally find a way to make your industry turn into a model where it becomes a virtuous cycle, where from the consumers to the investors to the suppliers, everybody is keen on the mission and excited about the impact. And so that's been kind of my journey the last few years, and it's been really exciting to see it happen. And it really has directed the success that I'm feeling I'm enjoying right now, with having a lot more opportunities and other things that we can open.
Yeah, that's super fun to hear all that stuff. And I just invite you, if Lauren, if you're watching the chat, to make some, you know, to ask some questions around those areas. I'll share quickly in terms of this being part of a pivot series. We're almost always pivoting, but particularly now during the pandemic, we're forced to, right? So I don't know if Nick is still on the call, but if not, I will brag about him. Yeah, Nicholas is on the call from Create Purpose. And so one of the fun things that I mentioned, Amar and I are on the board of a social enterprise incorporated both in the US and Mexico. And one of our board members who's based at UCSD, we were at a board meeting and kind of said, well, what if we we pivoted some of our work, which is including digital training and education for children living in orphanages. What if we pivoted it to allow for us to train migrants that are waiting for their asylum case in Tijuana? And so we're able with the grant to be able to launch with some partners there. And that's what this photo is here on the left. But what was really cool during the pandemic is that this coding for purpose or coding with purpose initiative of the Create Purpose organization now is open to all sorts of markets in the US and Latin America, because people are paying for their kids to learn how to code from home with this really good sort of validated model of teaching kids how to code with building blocks. And have some paid clients both in the US and Mexico, and like we were talking about on our last board meeting, just incredible opportunity during the pandemic to take advantage of the virtual environment. And we've seen lots of educational platforms sometimes have overwhelming demand that they couldn't even meet. So it's just sort of an interesting, that was sort of an interesting thing that happened. You know, I clearly posted this 2 months ago, so quite a little while ago during sort of the shutdown period, and now is something that will continue to help our organization, you know, earn more of our income from earned revenue strategies to supplement what we certainly raise through donations and other corporate philanthropy.
And Rachel, I think it's been really interesting because I've been on the board of Create Purpose since day one. And I've seen them kind of going through all kinds of models, trying to find that one model that's sustainable and that can, you know, be the model that can allow them to link, you know, like having an income revenue generating activity with the impact. And so it's been great to kind of like see that process and see how, you know, even with the coding, it wasn't like day one, they wanted to right away find a way to sell coding classes or anything like that. It was, you know, them starting to teach coding. You know, I helped a little bit with that at the beginning, but then they kept on moving and growing and working with the local community. I think they're very involved with Mind Hub, like one of the incubators in Tijuana. And so it was kind of fantastic to see like them teaching coding with a few orphanages. And then next thing you know, that opportunity came about and they jumped on it, and now it's actually real. So it's always a process. And I think that's one of the key elements, is that it's not, you know, it's very difficult from day one to be very clear on like, this is what's going to happen and this is how it will happen. It's always being able to kind of like let that morph into what it's supposed to be, you know?
Totally. And there's so many themes to pull out of this, and I'd be super curious, Lauren, interrupt me if there are questions, but a couple of themes to pull out of this in addition to it's a process, and you have to experiment, particularly with what's going to make money. If you're really kind of going first with impact, sometimes models are, you know, profit first and then the impact later. So it can come in either order really. But for these cases, it's pretty interesting. One, there's a ton of opportunity. In this case, there's the border. So we've certainly, you know, Amar and I are biased because we are really interested in the border and the opportunities that the border provides. But in terms of the ability to sort of shift a model of charity around orphanages to a model where people are, you know, voting with their dollars, they're paying for their child to learn how to code at home, and knowing that that's going to support children in orphanages, that's an education piece. So it's furthering the mission while making money. And so that's a model that certainly is attractive to me, and I think it sounds like to Amar, in terms of educating through the earned revenue strategy. And then, you know, there's certainly some other themes to be had here too, in terms of, you know, what models will work. There's even just looking at this call, there's models that vary from, you know, food and beverage, hospitality models where you're bringing people in and educating them about the mission, and then they might buy something there. That's something that Art Produce plays with a little bit that's on the call today. And then there's certainly some products that are being sold by Heroes. I think I see Margie Jones on the call, and that's a different model. And then I know Chris and I have lots of conversations at the Brink around workforce development. And there's certainly, that was one of the first models of social enterprise in terms of job training at coffee shops or at the Goodwill, et cetera, for people that have barriers to employment. So whatever you're selling, you could be selling anything. But what are the opportunities you're giving to people in terms of jobs? And I know, Adam, I'll give you a shout out too. You'll probably put it in the chat if I ask you, but kind of working on some stuff. Maybe when we do Q&A, it might be some chance for you to share a little bit about the Impactathon stuff that you're doing for kind of collective impact, kind of nationally and internationally. So anyway, on this call, there's quite a few models. And to Amar's point, the takeaway from this slide, hopefully, is one, there's this opportunity with the virtual environment to build community, and two, that it's a process and kind of figure out where there's demand. And that's the case when you're building any business, right? When you're kind of being customer focused on it and using lean startup principles. The last thing I want to mention here, particularly also because Yusuf Diko's on the call from Nigeria, so I'm super excited you're joining us from across the pond, if you will. I don't know if you could say that for Africa or just Europe, but anyway, from across the oceans. I'm grateful that you're here, and that was something we did on Saturday at the invitation of Andrea, who's also on the call, which was just pretty cool. And Yusuf, feel free to, if you want to chat or share during the Q&A time a little bit what you're doing. But the tagline for that was sort of visually impaired but digitally equipped. So it was a training for social entrepreneurs that have sight impairment in West Africa, and some really cool things they're doing. And it was just a really interesting theme to see, like the greatest strength we had. You know, my session was titled Your Heart and Your Ear. Your ear is your most important tool in terms of building any business, but particularly one that has social impact. How do you listen to your customers? How do you gain insight? So that was just like a really fun session that maybe would have been possible, or maybe I would have been available, or whatever. You know, Andrea certainly could tell more from the call, but during non-pandemic times, but certainly in a virtual environment where people are far more proficient in Zoom than before, allowed for some pretty interesting transcontinental learnings around social entrepreneurship. So quite a few interesting pivots that we did want to mention for the pivot series. So I guess I'd be curious, you know, I definitely want to make this point on this slide here, and I'll do a shout out now that he's on the call, Raul, who is also my fiance. So, you know, he's joining from the lab of Inhibrix, where he's working on, you know, they're working on orphan diseases. So definitely want to make a shout out to that industry in terms of it being a really important industry to San Diego, those that are working on really sort of mission-driven cures for diseases that people have sort of not, you know, they're called orphan diseases because people don't study them, and people, you know, struggle with them, and families. And so that's something that, you know, Misty, as our director, talks a lot about at the Brink too, which is just like, people often have a personal story for why they found a company. Not always. Sometimes it's just a market opportunity, but particularly when there's impact involved, there's just so much to be shared in terms of the, you know, the med tech and the patient innovation stuff that we're doing worldwide, and certainly in San Diego. And so lest you think that social impact just has to be, you know, selling artisan goods or doing something community driven that Amar and I have sort of shared in the hospitality space, or something there's an earned revenue based on some e-commerce or virtual education or something like that. There's so much impact that can be had. And I actually put out on Tigo Health, that's doing some interesting stuff in Imperial Valley right now, in COVID world, and in Inhibrix. Wanted to put those. I think I put some others on here too, but wanted to just kind of remind us how wide the impact can be. So I don't know. I mean, I mostly would be interested in having us have a little conversation, either if people want to put their video on, ask some questions, or chat around the bottom line and measurement and story. And looks like Amar has something too. Go for it.
Yeah, I think the ear is important, but I think the voice is just equally as important. Because, you know, one thing I used to do, I used to be very shy about the impact, or I used to be very shy about my story. You know, almost like didn't want to be that person that goes out there and talks about, you know, well, my subbing, you know, background, or, you know, where I come from and why I'm so driven and things like that, you know. And I realized at some point in time that it's actually, I was doing a disservice to whatever I cared about. So, you know, I'll give you an example. We own restaurants with a business partner since 2007. We have 4 different locations called Mathi's Bistro, and it's a food amenity inside a high-end commercial business towers. And, you know, during all this time, I mean, I started getting involved with a nonprofit called Corazon de Vida that supports orphanages in Mexico. Started the San Diego chapter, was heavily involved with that nonprofit, but I will never talk about it in Mathi's Bistro. I will never put a sign. I would never do anything related to that within my restaurants, because I didn't want people to think that I was doing the nonprofit thing to benefit my restaurants, or vice versa, you know? And so what happened is, you know, I finally had my shift where I realized that there was a mistake. And back, I think in 2016 or 17, we started putting information within the restaurants about the nonprofit work we're doing. And then we had the most magical things that will happen. Like, you had somebody just showing up, reading a flyer, and writing a check for $500 right there and then. We had people like rallying together, fighting to do like a toy drive over Christmas. So, you know, to me, like there was all these years where I had all this audience, all these people that were coming and eating in my restaurants, over 100 people a day, times 4 restaurants. And yet I was not utilizing that for any kind of impact, purpose, because I felt bad doing that. I felt like it could trigger like the wrong image of my action towards the good, and so now actually that shift has completely took me to a different level where I'm actually now extremely vocal about what we do, why we do it. And in reality, it actually is, it should be a center part of the business model, meaning like, your mission and what you stand for and the reason why you're doing what you're doing, everybody should know that. So when you have an interview and an employee, they should know that before they walk into the interview. And what that will create is it will attract those employees that are there because they're passionate about, the impact, the mission, or whatever, you're trying to do, instead of just the employee that just wants to, get a paycheck at the end of the month. And the hospitality business, it's definitely a lot more difficult than a lot of other industries. And so that has taken me from, now one of my projects that I have in the next, develop a social media company that will basically, have that business model. We would promote our businesses, but we will also help other nonprofits promote, help guide and consult nonprofits on how they can get over that. Social media is maybe the strongest, most powerful tool that we all have, and connecting with people online and having, this kind of key element to any business model at this point. And so, with I like to always go back to that Mezcal example, but we just started a Mezcal society on Facebook. We have 80 something members. It's 3 months old, but what's amazing about those members is they're very active. They're very engaged. So when, you create something, they actually respond. So we don't need to have 500 people that are not engaged. We just need that 80 people that are very engaged. And now we have a successful community. And so that's also another element, is that it's more about getting the right people to communicate and to connect with the brand than just having, the huge numbers. And then at the end, nobody feels the personal connection to the brand.
Totally. And I challenge you, I'm doing a lot of promotion for you, Amar, today, but I would challenge you to all look at his public relations for Tohono and some of the other brands, because quite an expert in terms of the storytelling piece and the local media piece. And then certainly what Amar mentioned in terms of active social media engagement. So it's really not about the total number of followers, particularly for the impact piece. It's about how engaged people are. And, that's how I find out about almost all the social enterprises in town. To be honest, and I'll give you a shout out, Sylvia, I find out either about them because of your LinkedIn, or I find out about them on social media. And so that's how I can both vote with my dollars in terms of supporting social enterprises, buying things that they're selling, as well as how, I can certainly figure out ways we can support them. So I don't know if there's, if there's questions, Lauren, just feel free to interrupt me. I'm going to kind of go to this other slide.
Just to add on to what you were saying about social media, Adam, thanks for throwing your LinkedIn up here and encouraging folks to connect to you. Just like Rachel gave us the example of Sylvia, I certainly learn a lot from her LinkedIn too. But yeah, connect to Adam. And Adam also mentioned the Impactathon, which is coming up in the websites there. So thanks, Adam, for doing that. And Amar, of course, a great shout out to you is on chat as well, just in terms of the impact you're having, the inspiration in your work and your vision, and being such a great 7x7 storyteller. So that's what's on chat so far, but we'd love to get questions from the group. So feel free to come off mute or throw your question right into chat and we'll relay it.
May I make one more comment? And this is on measurement, because I think we haven't touched on that. One thing that I've, realized at some point, I did a lot of study of the models out there, from the Tom Shoes model to the Kiva model to other, I will say, very successful organizations or companies, Patagonia, things like that. And it's been very interesting for me to see that a lot of those companies have pivoted over time as well on how they create the impact. And, it's not their initial idea of how, Tom Shoes, I think their story is amazing. They wanted to go in there and build like factories where as they will give the shoes to the community. So if you buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes to somebody in their community, in a poor community, right, somewhere around the world. And they will go into that community and basically build a factory to build the shoes there. So the idea was that we're creating jobs, right? We're providing, you know, people from the community with also sustainable like income. And the problem is they didn't think about the local people that were already making shoes. They didn't think about the fact that a lot of the not high quality shoes, they will go bad really quickly. So there was a lot of challenges with that. And so very quickly, you know, there was this backlash of like, well, what's your impact? Are you really having an impact, or are you really, is there more of a negative impact than a good impact? So for me, the term measurement is super important when you talk about social impact businesses, because it's really about that. It's about finding that within your model, the impact that you're creating has a positive, real like effect that you're seeking. And analyzing and understanding the communities is very important when you do that. And so one thing that I try to stay very much away from is this idea of like, we're going to give a percentage of our profit. Because that's just, to me, it's very difficult to judge. It's very difficult to understand where is that money coming from? How do you define profit, et cetera, et cetera. So I try to always come from a place in all the business model that we've been developing of an impact that is like more of a direct story. It's like, you know, we've helped this family, or we've helped exactly this community, or, you know, if the business model is around an industry that has the opportunity to create maybe like an eco-friendly product or a fair trade product, then you know, that's maybe the impact that you're creating with suppliers that, you know, have the right ethic on how they hire their employees. So the measurement to me is, there's a key element about trying to figure out what is the exact impact that you want to have, and how do you measure that in human like stories, in human ways, not just like, oh yeah, we gave X amount of dollars, or we gave this much percentage of our profits. It's how many people did you actually impact? How many families did you change their lives? And you know, how can you grow that number, you know, that direct impact. And so I will say that, you know, the storytelling is key to everything, but if you don't have the clear like impact element, you have a storytelling element to give as well. So it's super linked. So, you know, the voice to understand, or the ear to understand, you know, what the need is and what people are willing to buy in terms of, you know, if you have a business and a product or a service, the voice to get the story out, but then also like the heart to make sure that whatever you're doing comes from the right place, that you're really trying to have an impact, and not just like, you know, sugarcoating it and making it not a real mission-driven impact, you know. And so that, to me, those three elements come together, you have a successful business model in the social impact company.
Yeah, and to your point, Amar, we've learned a lot in the social impact space about what not to do. You know, Tom's Shoes invented the buy one, give one model, and we're grateful to them for that. But lots of, in that era, lots of missteps in terms of the net impact being sort of, some of it being negative and not taking into consideration local supply chains, et cetera. Margie, you just shared in the chat something really great. Do you want to talk quickly? If you want to, feel free if you want to share about ROC, return on community. It's a good term for us all to know.
Sure, I really appreciate this. Thank you, Omar, for sharing it, and thank you. I'm just soaking this all up. We're H3 Heroes, Helping Heroes for Life, and we are serving a community of homeless veterans and their families, and helping them get off the street and give them a hand up to dignity. We have plans for mobile hygiene units and COVID testing. And right now we're definitely in the fundraising stage and building our revenue streams. building a business. So we definitely have a true social enterprise model in which our for-profit side will fund our nonprofit. So I truly appreciate all the guidance, the information. It's wonderful, it's amazing. And I love that the idea that any space, any industry can be a conduit for social impact. So whether you go, left to right or right to left is always the kind of question in terms of, like you said, Amar, whether to promote your nonprofit in the restaurant, how you speak to investors, how you speak to other nonprofits, how you get your business going, whether you lead with the story for social impact, which is what we've found to be on a heart level, the way we talk to people. So putting all these pieces together is just an amazing opportunity. We're so excited. My partner, Mark, would love for him to jump in on the community here. So I'm so grateful for you. He actually just had a pretty major surgery, spinal fusion, and he's recovering. But we are steadfast and marching forward in capital raising and building up the e-commerce business through the pandemic. So appreciate knowing that you're all out there to support. And we do truly believe that we can enroll and invite the community, the local businesses, organizations in a true investment in community. So that's what the return on community is all about. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and what we'll be thinking about, I'll be thinking about him during recovery. I'd love to throw it out. We've got a few minutes left, and I promised 50 minutes on social enterprise, and would love to keep us within an hour with kind of Q&A. So I'd love to throw over to Sylvia Ma, since you're mentioned on this. It's always an ecosystem. This is actually a graphic created by a friend, Carter Crockett, who's actually in San Diego now, but has launched a couple of social impact business consulting firms in Kigali, Rwanda. So super interesting guy if you don't know him. Carter Crockett, give credit to him and his Fresh Brewed Tech article where he kind of built a San Diego ecosystem graphic, and certainly shout out right here to Center for Peace and Commerce. So Sylvia, I don't know, anything you want to add about either social impact investing, voting with your dollars, or certainly how to get involved with you or the Center for Peace and Commerce? Feel free.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I mean, this conversation is like near and dear to my heart. I love, tracking and impact and data, and how do we track data? And that's like awesomeness, right? And that's always longer conversations, but wanted to just kind of shout out to everybody. The Center for Peace and Commerce has our flagship event, which is the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge that Rachel, woohoo, so amazingly led for so many years. So I'm just like holding on to the coattails going forwards. But I think one of the things that we've seen, even from undergrads, grad students at a university like University of San Diego and other universities, that talent pool is something that, we need to also be cognizant of in this social impact space. So that's something just to that's one little nugget. Another piece is that, our winning team was BioMilk from Duke University this year, and she's creating breast milk out of stem cells. So I think that one of the things that I always am constantly working with investors about is that social impact and social innovation is not just not-for-profits that are doing amazing work, but somebody like this woman, Michelle Egger, that this is legit science and making an impact and having multiple SDGs, not just of saying, oh, great, we have now a human alternative to breast milk, but actually the way that we make the formula that we have has a really high impact on the environment. Very interesting, right? So impact investors are actually seeing that as more of something that they're looking at. As Next Wave Impact Fund, I'm on the investment committee for that. We look at and I put in the chat, the DNA of the company. So somebody like her, it's multiple strands of SDGs in their DNA, not just giving back like Amar said, not just, buy one, get one free, or buy one, give one, right? It's really transitioning because of the economic situation that we are right now, and because you can make an incredible impact. Of course, we can talk about how do you measure impact later, because that's always a little bit hard, but that's something that I'm seeing a trend even right now through COVID, is how much impact are you making, specifically multiple strands of DNA that you, what CPC and the impact investing aspect of, investors investing in a social innovation, like somebody who won our Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge. So hopefully that helped you, Rachel. I think that you wanted me to kind of just flip in.
Yeah, follow
and
Sylvia on LinkedIn for more.
I post every single day, and it's about posting for you guys, not for me. It's for the ecosystem, to highlight the amazing entrepreneurs and investors. Investors that are impact investors are kind of, they're quiet. They don't share anything because they invest and they're like, I'm doing good. I'm like, no, like All Across Africa. We invested in All Across Africa a year ago. We're constantly highlighting her, trying to get her into different lights. So the ecosystem is super important. So support each other, and we'll grow from here. But it's getting more and more kind of like that rigor. I see Hera Hub on here. Hera Hub changed to be a B Corp and has amazing impact stats on being a B Corp. So like everybody's doing their thing. Donation Match, I know them. I mean, amazing, right? I mean, everybody on this list are doing what we need to do, and we just need to highlight, as Amar says, social media, market all of us up. That is what is important too. So anyways, off my bandwagon.
Thank you, and some great servant leaders and vocal posters, Sylvia and Juliet on the call from CPC. So thank you.
Yeah, Juliet's on the call too. She's an amazing coordinator and connector of dots.
She is. Amar, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to, I think you know that, and a couple of people know that, but what my dream project is to create a community in San Diego of social impact investors, social impact entrepreneurs, because there is, I feel like San Diego does like a cohesive community. I think USD does a great job at already bringing a lot of good people together, and I think there is space still for a lot more connection between people and investors. There's, I think, a big amount of I guess goodwill and people that want to invest and want to be involved, but there isn't this cohesive energy and bringing people together, like that community element
for sure.
is really missing. And so that's ideally that's where I would like, at some point in the future, would definitely be interested in being involved with anything like that if someone on this call or further start something or is involved with something or wants to partner up in something like that.
I'll say goodwill and good business also. Yeah. So just put it out there.
Totally. And we have a couple kind of power players in San Diego. I might say San Diego and then the border region and even up, Tijuana, San Diego, Los Angeles. If you take those three cities and certainly include Imperial County, there's a lot more social enterprises at our sort of fingertips. But in terms of, there's a couple power players that connect the dots between these different groups in the ecosystem. So what we'll do after this is I'll send out also a list of resources that, that Sylvia and Juliet have breathed life into too. So certainly for USD students, I don't think there's too many on the call, but a couple alums on the call. I think I see Sarah and maybe Casey too. Certainly some resources for USD students. For Brink clients, we've got, some interesting stuff around using the tool, your ear as your tool, using Lean Startup. As well as the pivot series for sure. All the rest of the sessions I think are super, super helpful, from like marketing to customer experience to all of some more technical things, and then to investment, where a colleague of Sylvia's, Ben Moore, talks a little bit about the investment landscape right now in the pandemic. And then for San Diegans, we'll send this out to you, but there's some groups like SAIL, Mission Edge, Tory Project, Connect All, where whether the focus is social impact or the focus is diverse founders or low-income founders, there's some resources in San Diego besides us that are worth looking at. And then certainly the internet is an amazing tool to teach yourself. Shout out, I'll share, Sylvia and Juliet with permission. One of the partners that they have is Acumen Plus, which is online free training for social entrepreneurs. Really great modules. It's really great content, self-guided around all of these topics. So you can really nerd out around measurement, around storytelling, And again, it's free and it's a really good resource to just kind of self-pace and dig in where you feel like you need the most help. So I think we're like a minute from being done. So we'll send out resources, but here's my email. Certainly I'm more active on LinkedIn and Instagram and email than elsewhere. So if you want to keep a conversation, I don't know if Amar, if you want to follow Amar, I highly recommend checking out Tohono Mezcal or anywhere else you want to follow Amar, you want to be followed for more.
Yeah, I mean, social media is always the best. So, Instagram or Facebook, either one.
Great. Yeah, and Rachel, you certainly did a great job sharing the different partnerships and the ecosystem here. So I think he answered that question. I did see Dico had his hand raised. Dico, did you have a question?
Hello. Yeah, I suppose I did, but I think Rachel kind of covered it just now when she said that there are previous pivot sessions that I can refer to. So
yeah,
it's
we'll
mostly
send them to
about yeah. So I'm going to go back and take a look.
Yeah, highly recommend that. And I think if anybody's got, like, before people sign up, you want to put a call to action in the chat, feel free. I know Adam did for a Pactathon, and I know Sarah might have just, oh no, Sarah's still here. I think they've got something for One Digital World, a fundraiser coming up. So feel free to put calls to action if people want to follow each other in the chat before people sign up. And I think there was a question about coffee. I don't know if he's still on the call, but in case you are, there's a lot of places to connect, including this ecosystem, these individual names, and then coffee and beverage in general is a huge place to connect around social enterprise. So I don't know, we can make introductions if you're still on the call, whoever asked that question, to Sterling McHale, who used to run City Heights Coffee or Dojo Cafe in City Heights. Lots of really interesting models around coffee and social good. So, and certainly fair trade. So, all right, with that, I guess if there's any more, feel free to chat or I'll hang out for like another minute or two, but thank you. And thanks to Amar for joining us. Super grateful to hear your story.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all
Amar,
so
Rachel.
much.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was super
Bye.
fun. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, great to connect with you all, and stay tuned for next week. Next week, we're going to focus on how to spend your dollars in marketing and making smart decisions there. So we'd love to have you join us. Catherine Cleland, one of our Brink advisors, will be leading that session. So hopefully we'll see you on that one, and stay in touch. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day ahead.